The word culture has an extraordinarily complex meaning behind it. Culture has been defined in hundreds of ways over the years. Each of these definitions highlights various aspects of culture, and many of the definitions even conflict with each other. Page 3. From the textbook, the author did not give us a black and white definition of what culture is. Instead, he told us it means many things and explained the complication behind the variety of definitions out there. The risk with so many definitions is that the definition of culture becomes so broad that it means everything, which results in it meaning nothing for practical purposes. Page 3. The author also explained what culture is not. Culture is not equivalent to race, ethnicity, or nationality, even though we often use these types of labels in discussing different cultures. Page 3. So what is culture? At the core, culture of the definition is the idea that culture is a system. Page 4. These systems are embedded into us starting at an early age and help us operate in our everyday lives, and often referred to as shared systems. This sharing allows members to communicate with each other in relatively effective and efficient ways. Page 6. In each cultural system, it is designed to help everyone make sense of the world. When I define culture, I think of it as a big mixing bowl. In the bowl, there are various ingredients that make up culture. From their shared systems, symbols, worldviews, values, and norms, this shows how culture makes up our identities. Identities are markers of who we are, allowing ourselves and others to be recognized and interacted with in meaningful ways. Identities carry with them powerful expectations for behavior. Page 103. Identity is how we recognize ourselves and others in the process of acknowledging similarities and differences. We have two diverse types of identities, personal and social. Each identity is important to who we are because each can be used in conversations at any given time. The author explains personal identity as our perception of ourselves and others as unique, distinct from all others. Often these identities are centered on characteristics we associate ourselves with, such as being stubborn, friendly, or open-minded. Page 102. Social identity refers to the perceived role of communal memberships we have with others, roles such as student, teacher, boss, employee, parent, child, customer, salesperson, etc. These apply an identity that is grounded in our tasks in relationship to other people in terms of their roles. Page 103. We also have two pathways to identity, avow and ascribe. These pathways to identity are differentiated by whether it is a person in question who primarily establishes an identity or whether the person's identity is primarily established by others. Page 118. All these factors contribute to how you identify yourself and others, as well as how others identify you. Identity is also connected to our life experiences and goals. That is why you can avow an identity based on your goals, but you may also form the identities you are ascribed to by others. It is all based on context. My primary cultural identity is being an American. I chose this identity because it is the most salient in my life. I knowingly have ascribed this identity by others and have chosen to avow this identity as well. Identifying as an American heavily affects my life because it shows the region I was born and raised. It has given me a shared system that helps me make sense of the world and contributes to who I am. It has formed my worldviews, values, norms, which all go into the mixing bowl for what makes culture. Without the cultural identity, I would not be able to communicate within my community effectively and efficiently. This identity helps me recognize myself and others recognize me. This author explains, because our expectations about what behaviors are associated with which identities vary cross-culturally, we may end up with an ascribed identity that we never expected. Before taking this course, I would not think of being an American as my identity, but learning the impact it has made on my everyday life, it actually became the most important. Three of my co-culture identities are being a Christian, Italian, and a woman. I chose these three co-cultures because they are good examples of beliefs, values, and behaviors that set me apart from my primary cultural group. Being a Christian, I have certain religious beliefs other Americans may not have. They come with values that change the generalized way of thinking. With my Italian co-culture, I am set apart from my American cultural identity because our values and behaviors are a little different. My family has passed down the slower way of life and put less emphasis on work and money and more on family. Lastly, I chose being a woman because it highlights the pathways to identity and how I can be ascribed certain attributes just by being a woman, but I also can avow different ones too. Two contexts that impact my identity as an American are hunting and healthcare. Hunting because it deals closely with the protection of animals, page 321. In Africa, it is the norm to hunt zebras, but for me as an American, I cannot fathom that. Although I was recently educated on why it is normal and how it helps their society, the text states vulnerable conversation deals with communication about the environment for purpose of not only understanding human-nature relations, but also finding solutions to urgent environmental concerns. Page 321. Next is healthcare, in which the context impacts my identity by what I believe is okay to eat and what is not okay to eat. Like the story in Chapter 10, where the dessert the girls were eating was covered in raw eggs, similar scenarios happen worldwide because we do not have the same context of health standards. Like the text says, the healthcare field itself encompasses a multitude of culturally diverse ways of viewing what is appropriate healthcare. Page 331. Another example of this would be in Asian countries. They offer chicken sashimi, when here in America we are told eating raw chicken is bad. The context of healthcare impacts my cultural identity because I would never eat raw chicken even if it were deemed safe somewhere else. It would also be hard for me to go against any health standard that was unconventional for my own context. When it comes to the roles that verbal and nonverbal communication play in my overall identity, they both are very prominent. I use verbal communication all day, but I also use nonverbal communication, which conveys some sort of message to us but is not the actual words of our language. Page 168. This is important to my identity because of my understanding for both and need for both. Verbal and nonverbal communication play huge roles in our identities every day, from facial expressions to body movements and everything in between. The roles of judgment, stereotype, and generalizations play a huge role in my American identity because I am a walking image of all three. We're always told not to judge a book by its cover, but often we do subconsciously. Stereotypes are attributes that cover up individual differences and ascribe certain characteristics to an entire group of people. Like I have described in the story many times in the past, going to Mexico and getting that ascribed identity about being an American and assuming that I don't know how to speak Spanish and I'm arrogant, kind of just that stereotype, taking away my own identity. Generalizations work similarly because we are essentially just taking the butter off the toast. This happens when people decide to make statements about a group of people based on little facts or background knowledge. An example of this would be saying all baseball players are dumb. There are a few facts to back that statement up, making it a generalization. Conflict affects my cultural identity because my cultural identity decides how I respond to conflict. There are many different approaches to the study of conflict, whether intercultural conflict or other, page 246. The author goes into discussing the type of conflict response you choose reflects your cultural identity. The frequency with some of these choices are made or the way these choices are typically viewed also reflect different cultural orientations to conflict.